Hello everyone and welcome to our little webinar about benefits of Windows Virtual Desktop. Let me please introduce myself shortly. My name is Mihai Kileber. I'm a senior Azure engineer working at Softline since 3 years by now. I came from Microsoft actually, where I spent literally 7 years of my life. I also earned some certifications, from which the most important ones is the Azure Solutions Architect and the Microsoft Certified Trainer 1. Let us go through the agenda also shortly. So let me introduce you actually what Windows Virtual Desktop really is, when you should consider the implementation of this solution. I will bring you some live scenarios or live usage scenarios from actually already delivered Windows Virtual Desktop projects or in progress projects. Then we will summarize the benefits of Windows Virtual Desktop. I will shortly give you some insights how you can leverage our expertise. And at the end, I will shortly show you how the Windows Virtual Desktop in its entire deployment looks and feels like in real life. So let's jump in. So what is actually Windows Virtual Desktop? Windows Virtual Desktop is Microsoft's virtualization service, which delivers you either server desktops or client desktops, which you can publish in two different ways, either as a dedicated desktop for dedicated users or either as a pooled solution for a bunch of users or a group of different users. Let's check shortly what you can do actually with Windows Virtual Desktop. Basically, you have the possibility to set up multi-session desktops thanks to the new version or new release of Windows 10 multi-session operating systems, and also the same support in server OSs starting from Windows Server 2016. You can, of course, not only virtualize desktops in their entirety, you can, of course, also virtualize applications. So you can basically publish applications of your choice on these desktops, whether these are legacy built-in Microsoft applications or Windows applications, or even your own company applications. In case there is a need for extending Windows 7 security updates, it is also supported to have Windows 7 desktops with some extensions or certain prerequisites which you have to meet on these desktops before these can be used in a Windows Virtual Desktop deployment. Or you can also bring your own and currently existing remote desktop services establishment to the cloud. So basically you can migrate your on-premises remote desktop solution as a Windows Virtual Desktop solution into Azure. As we already mentioned, it's not only possible to virtualize desktops, of course, you can also virtualize applications, and you have the variety of operating systems to use, starting from Windows 7 through Windows 10 and also Windows Server 2016 upwards. Let us check shortly the key capabilities. So basically, Windows Virtual Desktop offers you the possibility to set up a scalable and flexible environment, which means you can create a full desktop virtualization environment in your Azure subscription, for example, without having to run any additional gateway servers, for instance. Or you can publish as many host pools as you need to accommodate your diverse workloads. Or you can also bring your own image for production workloads, or even test some from the Azure Gallery when you are deploying this solution. And of course, you can also do cost reduction when you use the pooled multi-session resources with Windows 10 enterprise multi-session capabilities, for example. Or you can also provide, of course, individual ownership through personal desktops. The personal desktops are actually the dedicated desktops, which I just mentioned before. You can also deploy and manage virtual desktops, of course. That means use the Azure portal or Windows Virtual Desktop PowerShell or the REST API interfaces to configure the host pools or create app groups or assign even users and publish different resources which you would like to offer through your Windows Virtual Desktop deployment. You can also publish full desktop or individual remote apps from a single host pool, create individual app groups for different set of users, or even assign users to multiple app groups to reduce the number of images, for example. In the short demo, after the slides, you will see actually how this looks like when you virtualize an entire desktop, and also in case you have published different applications from that desktop as a remote app. As you also manage your environment, you can use, of course, built-in delegated access to assign roles or collect even diagnostics to understand the various configuration possibilities or even user errors. Of course, you can also make usage of the new diagnostic services to troubleshoot these errors. Or you can only manage the image and virtual machines, not the infrastructure in its entirety. So you can actually also reduce management tasks or the load for management tasks. And then, of course, you can also assign and connect users to your virtual desktops or the publish remote applications. That means, for example, once assigned, users can launch any Windows Virtual Desktop client to connect to which they have actually permissions assigned, or even through any client which you would like to use for connecting to these Windows Virtual Desktop deployments, start and use any applications you have remotely published from these host pool session host machines. Let's check shortly which are the supported remote desktop clients. This means the clients which you can use to connect your users to the deployed Windows Virtual Desktop solution. Of course, it's up to you. It's absolutely supported to use the built-in remote desktop client from any Windows desktop, of course. Then there is a dedicated web client which connects you to the Windows Virtual Desktop deployment through the Microsoft Remote Desktop Services service. Of course, there is a dedicated client which you can install on macOS, iOS, or Android clients. And of course, you can also use the Microsoft Store client, which is basically a legacy Windows application. Let's see the supported virtual machine OS images, which you can use for a Windows Virtual Desktop deployment. In terms of the Azure Gallery images, the Windows 7 option is not included, of course, because Windows 7 can only be used as a custom image and only in case it's still used in your organization or in case you still have some older or legacy applications where you have to rely on Windows 7 client desktops, but also only the Windows 7 Enterprise Edition with certain prerequisites it has to meet before it can be used as a OS image for a session host machine. Of course, the Windows 10 Enterprise Multi-Session OS from version 1809 or later is of course supported. The regular Windows 10 Enterprise version 1809 or later is also supported. And also the Windows Server 2016 and 2019, as well as the Windows Server 2012 R2 images are still supported as a regular session host machine. Now, when it comes to Windows Virtual Desktop, a very important and a very big question is always the licensing. In summary, It depends on the image you use for the Windows Virtual Desktop Session Host machines. In case you are using a server image, so any of the supported Windows Server images as the Session Host Machine OS images, you are eligible to connect to it when you use a regular RDS client access license, either per user or per device, when you have an agreement which includes also software assurance. That's the most important thing, what you have to remember in terms of licensing OS servers. Also very important, the licensing or the eligibility to connect to a Windows Virtual Desktop Session Host machine, which hosts any of the supported server operating systems, does not make you eligible to use any Office product installed on those images, for example. In case you would like to publish also Office 365 applications, then you have to qualify or you have to make yourself eligible with any of the Office 365 or M365E plans. When you have this, you are also eligible to use Office applications as well on the server OS images for Windows Virtual Desktop. Also, in case of client OS licensing, in case you have either one of these agreements or licenses, then you are eligible to connect to your Windows 10 or Windows 7 OS image session host machines in a Windows Virtual Desktop deployment. Also very important in terms of external users. And with external users, I do not mean your own organizational users who are just working from an external location. With external users, I mean subcontractors or partners of your organization who may need, for certain reasons, access to your environment or to one of your Windows Virtual Desktop clients, whether it is an OS image of a server type or a client type. You have to license also these external users in a certain way. In case of server OSs, it's quite easy. You can assign the user an RDS CIL, either a user one or a device one. In case of client OS licensing, you have to give the user a Windows 10 VDA per user license. This is specific for users, again, external users who do not belong to your own organizational tenants, so who are either your partners or subcontractors, to be able to access the images on the Windows Virtual Desktop Session Host machine. So when should you consider implementing a Windows Virtual Desktop solution? Actually, it's quite easy in case innovation matters for the organization, or in case your business growth can be also ensured or can be helped with Windows Virtual Desktop deployment. In case you would like to secure the access to your corporate resources from the outside, so even from your own organization internal users when they need to connect from their own devices, either from home or from any other remote location in a secure way, because there are some built-in security features which you do not have to invent from scratch in a Windows Virtual Desktop deployment. Or in case you would like to optimize cost or would like to lower the workload overhead, because the maintenance on its own for a Windows Virtual Desktop deployment, because it's virtualized like any other infrastructural component you are using in Azure, for example, is quite easy and centralized through a management portal or even through PowerShell or CLI, whatever you would prefer. Now let's check some real-life usage scenarios where corporations or organizations decided to use the Windows Virtual Desktop solution. For example, the customer is a construction company, and there was the need, for example, for their architects who are using very specific CAD design applications to enable them also to work from home, especially as the pandemic started. There they realized that this is actually in terms of organizational ways or even IT infrastructural ways not quite possible to give them that hardware they really would need to work from any remote location like they would do in their own offices where they have the appropriate hardware actually. So basically the solution was to utilize the N-series virtual machines from Azure, which are dedicated GPU specific virtual machines for this kind of workload, and establish a Windows virtual solution for 50 plus users, which made sure that any user or any architect who is connecting remotely to this RDP deployment can work from home and from any device of their choice, as if they would sit directly in the office in front of their specific hardware ready-made for this design work. Let's take another example, which is a company in the energy industry or from the energy industry. This company was actually searching for a solution or a replacement or an alternative, if you would like to have it like this, for their Citrix establishment for approximately 200 users, because they wanted to innovate, they wanted to modernize their infrastructure, and they wanted actually to move away from Citrix. So basically all the features this organization was using from Citrix, namely publishing remote applications or granting access to centralized shares or storages, or even granting access to virtualized desktops, all these can be established as well in a quite easy and secure way with Windows Virtual Desktop. Let's check another example. This company was or is a company from the finance industry, where this company built or established a new support service center and also developing a center in different regions across the globe. And they was looking for a solution how they could grant these users or these new locations appropriate desktops or appropriate infrastructure for their daily work without the need of having to buy, let's say, physical hardware or provide each and every new employee, let's say, physical equipment, which would have been a nightmare actually in terms of logistics. So in that particular case, also the choice was the Windows Virtual Desktop in both configurations. So for the developers in different regions, they preferred dedicated desktops, and for the support center agents, they preferred the pooled desktops, so that not every 200 user has, for example, dedicated desktops. So let's summarize shortly the benefits of Windows Virtual Desktop to also summarize actually the topic of this short webinar. So basically the benefits of Windows Virtual Desktops is to enable secure and productive remote work on really any device, keep applications, of course, and user data or sensitive corporate data secure, protect also against outages to stay productive, or provide the familiarity and compatibility of Windows 10 with the new scalable multi-session experience for your end users. In terms of experience, is not different from any previously known remote desktop experience. You will see it shortly also in the demo. Even the remote desktop client can be the same as you used previously in case you had already an RDS establishment on premises. Of course, you can also reduce costs of licensing and infrastructure in case you are deploying the Windows Virtual Desktop solution for your organization internal users, because with certain agreements, also the license for Windows Virtual Desktop is already included, so there are no additional licensing charges. Or, of course, you can also simplify the IT management. In short, management of Windows Virtual Desktop deployment can be done from a centralized interface, either the Azure portal or a dedicated management interface in case the classic version of the Windows Virtual Desktop was deployed to your organization. So how can you leverage our expertise in upcoming projects or planned projects which involves the Windows Virtual Desktops? Softline has Microsoft certified regional and international experts with several years of cloud technology experience already. We offer consulting services, including the assessment of business and infrastructure needs. So what we basically do is not just asking our customers or potential customers what they just need, and then we establish that. We also align the infrastructural needs or cloud technology needs with the business. We also do personalized workshop deliveries based on specific business needs. So let's say we completed one of these assessments already. We have some or detailed background information already about the requirements. We also prepared already an infrastructural list, let's say, about the required components and the plan, how this should look like. We customize this to the specific business, to the specific customer, and then present in a workshop the entire solution before we even do the first click. We do also end-to-end projects deliveries, which involves from the very first meeting up to the planning until the entire deployment and full documentation as well by our delivery experts. We also follow during these implementations the Microsoft's cloud adoption framework and also the best practices approach, at least. Of course, it is not always possible to do a deployment or a planning in every organization that way, but we align the deployment planning and the solution to meet the most these kind of needs. And we also provide managed services, not only for Windows Virtual Desktop deployments, but also for the entire Azure infrastructure, what a customer has through our Microsoft Azure Expert MSP accreditation already. And now let's see, before the theory gets too much, how the Windows Virtual Desktop deployment looks like in real life. So I hope you can also see my screen and my Azure portal. So basically, a Windows Virtual Desktop deployment consists of a resource group which contains the virtual network for that solution, including the VPN connection for that solution, a resource group which contains an extension of my on-premises domain controller. So I have one DC in my resource group, which is continuously synchronizing not only with my on-prem domain controllers, but also with my Azure Active Directory. And then I have a resource group which contains actually the host pool machines themselves. In this little deployment, there are altogether 2 virtual machines serving as a pooled session host configurations. So really not a big deployment. In terms of connecting to these virtual desktops or the deployment of application, as I was mentioning, there are more possibilities to use. The most commonly used application, let's say, to connect to these Windows virtual desktop deployments is the remote desktop Windows client application, or even Mac OS or iOS or Android version of the same client. Here in this particular demo deployment, you can see that I have two users all together in my remote desktop tenant. One is my graphical Windows virtual desktop admin user who has permissions to everything, and one is my simple remote app user who has just permissions to use the remote applications. Of course, in this remote desktop client, I can see both assignments because I'm logged on to this machine with my admin account, and of course the admin can see everything which was deployed in a given tenant. But if I would like to use, let's say, the browser-based client, because I can also connect to the remote desktop establishment using any kind of web browser, then I will only see that deployment or that assignment or that possibility which I have really assigned. So in this particular case, in that browser, I am signed in with my graphical Windows virtual desktop user, so I have the possibility to log in to the Windows virtual desktop session host machine. Let's just do that, just to show you how it feels and looks like. Here I can provide also some additional settings, what I would like to allow going through the remote desktop connection. Let's say I would like to allow my clipboard and my printer, and then it starts the connection to my pooled session host machine. And after the connection was established, the remote desktop client, so the OS, will appear on my screen. Of course, depending on the network bandwidth, it can take some time, and hopefully I won't mistype the password of my user. And now, as I can see, I was able to connect successfully, so the desktop should appear. So this is how it looks and feels like in the web client, for example. When I connect to the web client, I get a full desktop. Versus, let's say, if I am connected with my remote app user, I can only see the published remote applications, which are, of course, coming from that specific pool where I have my session host machine. So these are actually applications I have installed on my session host machine, and I am planned to publish or make available for remote users, let's say. Let's just check. Let's check if I would like to start Notepad. Yes, I would like to allow also the access. So actually what happens, it is establishing a connection, of course, to the remote desktop machine. So it is establishing a session to the machine. But finally, at the end, I won't get a full dedicated desktop. The only thing what will happen, I will get actually the Notepad opened on my own machine. The web client is just, let's say, it's recommended to use the web client if there is no specific client installed on any Windows machine, but it's quite slow. So the web client is not always the fastest possibility to connect to these applications or even to connect to these desktops. For that purpose, we are always recommending to use actually the remote desktop client application in case we have a Windows desktop, for example. And once the session is configured, as I can see, or as we can see, now I have finally my Notepad opened. Versus When I do the same, for example, using the client application, let's just open WordPad. I just double click on WordPad, establishing the session. Let us check. Okay, it's asking, of course, again for my password. And if all goes well, I would get my WordPad opened as well, a bit faster than the web client. And of course, the establishment of the session takes longer time only in case you do this the very first time. So basically, this is the look and feel of Windows Virtual Desktop. In case you may have any questions, or in case you would like to have, as previously mentioned by Kata, our 1-hour consultation, you will get this link where you can book directly 1 hour with our experts in our calendars, so we can also settle these questions. And with that, I would like to thank you very much in participating in our little webinar session. Thank you very much.